time trial, also known as the race of truth. One rider against the clock in absolute solitude. Now, doing a good one might seem quite simple. Just go as hard as you can from start to finish, but I'm afraid it's a little bit more complicated than that, because pacing is absolutely key. Go too hard at the start, we go into the red and pay for it through the rest of the race and have an overall slower time. So here are our tips to good pacing and getting the most out of your time trial. There's no doubt that there's one piece of hardware which trumps all others when it comes to pacing a time trial, and that is a power meter. So as you can see on my time trial bike, I have got Garmin Vector pedals, and I've also been using them in training regularly over the last year. That has allowed me to build up a clear picture of my personal best over various durations along the way, and that is a very valuable piece of information. Here's why. Let's say that your target event is a 10-kilometre time trial or 6.2 miles, and based on the course you estimate it's going to take you around 15 minutes. Now, having built up that picture in training of your personal best, take a look at your critical power curve, which should look something like this, and have a look at your PB over the last year for 15 minutes. Now, we're going to use our old friend Domestique as our example. His personal best over the last year at 15 minutes has been 300 watts. Now, it's important to remember on the day of your event, and no matter how well you've trained, prepared, rested, tapered, etc., you're unlikely to improve more than 5% on your PB unless you're very new to the sport of cycling. For very experienced riders, that number is going to be even less. So for Domestique, who's been riding for goodness knows how many years now, 310 watts on the day would be absolutely incredible. So how do we use this information on the day of our event? Well, firstly, it's important to note that the initial 10-second sprint to get us up to speed uses a different physiological system, so it's okay for us to sprint off the start line. However, once you've sat in the saddle and nestled into your time trial position, it's really important that you stick to the power you know you can do for the duration. And actually, this is much easier said than done, because with the adrenaline running through your body on the day of the event, this is going to feel incredibly easy. But it's really important that we stick to our target and don't go over it. So have your Garmin somewhere on your bars where you can look down at it without tilting your head and compromising your time trial position. Now, taking the example of our 15-minute time trial, once we're around 5 minutes through, that's the point where we can go a bit more on feel and a little bit less on our power numbers. We're still feeling very good. We can raise our game ever so cautiously. You might even end up with what's known as a negative split, whereby you do a higher average power in the second half of the event than you did in the first half. However, it's still a good idea to take the occasional glance down at your Garmin. Not only is it motivating, it will also make sure that you push yourself all the way to the line. You can use this pacing strategy for all time trials over around 5 minutes in length. So for the first third, stick to a power you know you can do for the duration. After that, go a bit more on feel and a bit less on power. If you can raise the power significantly over the last part, you've probably started a bit too easy. If you can't sustain it too hard, and if you can just about sustain it, you've probably done things perfectly. As ever, the more you do it, the better you'll get. He's got a bit to learn, but he's got potential. So what if you don't own a power meter? Well, it is certainly possible to pace a time trial well using a heart rate monitor and your own personal supercomputer, which is your brain. Amateurs and pros alike did this for many years before the power meters came along, and in fact a lot of pros still use that method to this day. What's important if you're going to use a heart rate monitor is again that you build up a database of how your heart rate responds to different situations. So what kind of heart rate do you sit on for a long, hard effort? Is it elevated if you take caffeine, if you're riding in very hot conditions, or if you tapered and rested for an event? Factoring in your own personal quirks like this will allow you to make sure on the day of the event that you're riding hard enough, but not too hard. Now, if you're pacing your time trial using a heart rate monitor, very important to remember that you should spend the first few minutes gradually bringing your heart rate up to the desired beats per minute. Those same few minutes, in fact, that we've just told power meter users they should find very comfortable indeed. Don't make the mistake of trying to get your heart rate up as quickly as possible. That's a recipe for disaster. Now, it can take some practice, but with experience what you should find is that you can gradually bring your heart rate up over the first few minutes whilst accumulating very little lactic acid in your legs. But what if you don't have either of those tools at your disposal? How should you pace a time trial purely on feel? Well, as you've probably learnt already in this video, the first third or so of the event you should feel well within yourself. So if I look back at a few of my time trials as a pro, where I felt like I timed things and paced things perfectly, in that first third I actually felt like I was going to be able to sustain the pace for over twice the duration I needed. Then in the second third, things should start to feel that little bit harder. So breathing rate quite high, but controlled, legs feeling like they're really pushing, but certainly nowhere near the limit. Then by halfway through, you should be in full flow. Going hard, still in control, but starting to feel the effects of what you've done already. Then, in the final 20% or so of the event, you should feel on the limit of your physical capabilities. Unsure if you're going to be able to sustain the pace, and only managing it through sheer mental strength and willpower, crossing the line, having got everything out of your body. So, in summary, make sure you don't start your event too hard. Go into the red at the beginning and you'll pay for that effort all the way through to the end. Secondly, use any tools you've got to help as a guide, particularly in the first third. So, heart rate monitor or power meter is a great tool, but after that initial effort, you can use your own subjective feeling to judge your pacing. Finally, experience counts for a lot. The more time trials you do, the better you'll know your body and the better your pacing strategy will be. Now, we've got loads more content relevant to time trials on our channel. So, if you'd like to see how to train for time trials, all you've got to do is click just up there. On the other hand, if you'd like to see how to get more aerodynamic on your road bike, just click down there. And don't forget that subscribing to the channel is absolutely free. You'll make sure you never miss any more content. And all you've got to do is click on my Bambino time trial helmet. Sorry, Bambino. Bambino. Not Bombino. It was alright until then.